Hey, folks. It's too bad that I'm missing today. This is, again, one of those cases that was sent from sort of the social studies gods down for us to teach. So, we're going to be looking at really the landmark case in terms of school searches, and it's known as New Jersey versus TLO. TLO are the initials of the young woman who was involved in this case. Now, it needs to start out with an acknowledgement that back in the day, there used to be many more problems than there are today with kids smoking in the bathroom. Now, I fully recognize that kids may still smoke in the bathroom. Sometimes it smells more like a blueberry or mint or cinnamon, as kids seem to be inexplicably vaping as opposed to smoking cigarettes. But certainly, I remember when I was in school, you could go into the bathroom and be like, whoa, somebody is definitely smoking tobacco in here. It was against the rules then, it's against the rules now, but it's just sort of a different form of breaking the rules. Now, back in the early 80s, there were two freshman girls that were caught by a teacher smoking cigarettes in the bathroom. Okay. So again, teacher walks in, two girls are smoking. Teacher says, come with me. We're going to the vice principal's office and we're going to deal with this right now. One of the girls goes, yeah, I did it. All right. The other girl goes, I wasn't doing it. Now, because there was the teacher's word saying she saw both girls doing it and one girl admitted it, the vice principal goes, you know what? I have reason to believe you're lying. Let me see your purse, to T.L.O, who denies it. Now, as soon as the vice principal opens up T.L.O's purse, she sees a pack of cigarettes. Okay. So again, sort of said you weren't smoking. Here's a pack of cigarettes, but also finds rolling papers. Now, rolling papers can be used to roll loose leaf tobacco, but are more often used to roll marijuana cigarettes. So the assistant principal has now seen cigarettes and rolling papers and says, you know what? I think I've seen enough to justify digging a little deeper into this purse. So digs a little deeper. And as he searches the purse more extensively, he discovers a small amount of marijuana, a pipe for smoking marijuana, empty plastic bags that likely had formerly held marijuana, finds a large quantity of money in $1 bills, suggesting that TLO is selling marijuana, two letters that actually implicate TLO in dealing marijuana, an index card that appears to list students who owe TLO money. So it all started with smoking in the bathroom, an admission by one girl, a denial by the other, reason for the vice principal to go into the purse, finding tobacco, finding rolling papers, and then finding much, much more that sort of backed up that original suspicion. So school calls the mom. Mom brings the daughter ultimately to the police station where she has to go because she has not only broken a school rule, she's broken the law. TLL admits to selling drugs at school. All the evidence is stacked against her, so wouldn't have made much sense to not admit it. Later, she's convicted in juvenile court, again, for kids under 18. But TLO, after the conviction, says, listen, you may have found all this in my purse, but you were not allowed to search my purse. And then again, fruit of the poisonous tree, it's inadmissible. So even if I may be guilty, you couldn't have ever determined my guilt in the first place because that was an illegal search. Now, the case made its way all the way to the Supreme Court, and it's really important, again, because there weren't a lot of school search cases as precedent. This really set the precedent. So, first, it said in general, schools are different than other places that deal with adults. First and foremost, there is no need to have a warrant, in part because a warrant takes a long time to have to go get. At schools, we're dealing much more with time sensitive matters. So, don't need a warrant, which is obviously very different than you would have in adult circumstances. And on top of that, you only need reasonable suspicion. So we certainly had talked about reasonable suspicion in the context of Terry v. Ohio, which we went over on Tuesday in class. Again, reasonable suspicion is lower than probable cause, but is more than a hunch. So can't really quantify it, but if there is a quantification, it's probably about 30% chance that you're going to find what you think you're looking for. So it's a lower threshold than you need for adults. And of course, in the Terry case, that's very specific to having, stop, and frisk. Now, in the case of TLO specifically, the court ruled that the search of the purse was justified at its inception. That means when the assistant principal originally went in the purse, he had reasonable suspicion to believe that T.L.O was lying, in part because of what the teacher had seen, and in part because the other student admitted it. And then it was reasonable in its scope. Once you saw the cigarettes and the rolling papers, continuing to go further was reasonable. So oftentimes you look at inception, yeah, it was good, and the scope was good. So we look at this, and the question that we really have to think about is, what is reasonable suspicion? Is that just in a sense of assistant principal looking at TLO and going, she looks like she's a liar? Or is it having a decent enough reason to go ahead with that search? So I'm going to present you with 6 cases that have come after TLO. And your question is this reasonable suspicion to search a student? They are all lower court cases. None are Supreme Court cases like TLO. But I'm going to ask you to answer in Ed Puzzle, was this a legitimate search or not, based on basically the question, do you think that the school had reasonable suspicion to go through with it? Which means basically, was it reasonable at inception? So I'll ask you to explain your logic. So here we go. Here's the first case. 4 students are huddled together, one with money in his hand and another with his hand in his pocket. Now, this is a case in the state of Florida in the late 90s. The student's backpack and wallet were searched. Okay. Was that reasonable suspicion, seeing the students huddled together, one with money, okay, and another with his hand in his pocket? Okay. Certainly, perhaps suspicious, but does it rise to the level as justifying a search? Second case, also in the mid 90s in New Hampshire, an anonymous phone call calls a high school administrator and says, hey, listen, there's going to be a kid bringing drugs to school. All right. Then you add to that the fact that the student had a reputation as a drug dealer. Okay. Is that enough reasonable suspicion to search this student? Next, a report is made by 2 students to a school official that another student possesses a gun. Okay. 2 students go to administrator. That kid has a gun. Enough reasonable suspicion to have a search? Right here, New Trier High School, right just down the road in Winnetka. An experienced drug counselor observes a student who appears distracted and has bloodshot eyes and dilated pupils. That student is then brought from that experienced drug counselor to the nurse to do eye tests and take his blood pressure. Was that enough reasonable suspicion to do that search in the nurse's office? A student in an art class refuses to consent to a search of his backpack for allegedly stolen property. All of the other kids in the class were asked to consent, and all of them did. He's the only one who didn't. He's suspended for 10 days for his refusal. Reasonable suspicion or not? And lastly, the odor of marijuana in the hall causes an administrator to search all bags and pockets of people in that hallway. So again, all of these cases are post TLO. They all are in the 80s and 90s. Please do not look them up. That would ruin it. But I'm hoping that you'll give a educated guess on whether you think this is in fact reasonable suspicion that made the search justified at its inception.